Hello, I'm Kate Russell, tech reporter, author and professional ferret mum, and it is my very great pleasure to introduce today's session in Fantastic Books' MABLE event, the massive autumn book launch event. And today's launch event is all about science fiction. Of course, I myself have a book in this genre, elite, mostly harmless, but today you're going to be hearing readings from these books. James Vigor, The Reality Exchange, Ramon Marett, The Star Protocol, and Jack Mann, Gravity's Arrow. And there's also going to be a reading from Drew Wagar from the Shadeward series. So what tenuous link to ferrets can we make with these books? Well, the youthful Samyuki in The Reality Exchange fights with the agility and tenacity of a ferret, and she shares the furry critter's fierce loyalty to those she trusts. It's the good guys in the Star Protocol who can take ferrets as their role models. The professor can outmatch any ferret when it comes to curiosity, although trying to match their agility causes him some real problems. The secret agent, John, is the most mischievous, which is not always helpful given what they're up against. But if you want real ferret-like tenacity, look no further than Will, fiercely loyal to his friends, but with the mighty sharp bite via his sniper rifle. It sounds absolutely brilliant. In Gravity's Arrow, Firo, a young boy on the cusp of adulthood, is tenaciously ferret-like in his determination to uncover what on earth is going on. He searches, he explores, he uses guile and every trick he can think of. Definitely sounds like a ferret to me. The fact that his parents don't want him to know only fuels his curiosity. No ferret could be more assiduous in its search or inventive in ways to delve into what might be hidden treasures. So that's your content coming up right now.
Are we sitting comfortably? Then we shall begin.
Gravity's Arrow by Jack Mann. Prologue. The base of the giant monolith fell into shadow as the sky went dark over the plains. Worshippers of all species of the galaxy called out towards the towering rock in 100 different tongues. Struggling through the bustle and clamour, two stooped figures drew the attention of those they passed. "Priest, bless this blade. It has taken the lives of 108 unbelievers." "Let my master travel in peace," said the acolyte, sweat trickling down his straining face. With thick arms, he supported the cowl-shrouded figure beside him forward another step. "He has more important business here than your bloodied knife." The worshipper bowed and cowered back among the watching earthmen, scale-skinned Yeel and feather-faced Heagle. "Not much further," the acolyte whispered into his master's ear. Cries went up about them. "Make way! A holy arbiter has come! The prophet Avithen shall be recognised! Praise be to Aten!" Bodies moved aside, fell to their knees and prostrated themselves. As the priest and his disciple passed, the path filled in behind them. At its end they paused, confronted by a row of obelisks embedded with skulls. Crude warnings had been chiselled into the bone of some, above where the eyes had long since rotted away. An open space stretched out beyond to where the stony shoulder of the monolith jutted up through the earth. "Master Euthreus, can you continue?" asked the acolyte. Euthreus bent double over his disciple's elbow, coughed into his free hand. He wiped the blood of his lungs onto his robes and gazed up at the looming rock. He steadied himself and took a stride forward. "Wait here, brother. By the will of Aten, the rest of this journey I must make alone." One of the prophet's guards, standing before a barricade of spikes and traps, called out to Euthreus as he neared. "Who approaches the sacred enclosure?" Euthreus reached into his cloak and brought out a scroll. Upon reading it, the fire that had burned in the guard's eyes went out. The prophet has been expecting you. I would be honoured to be your guide. Euthreus assented. He was taken to where a passage had been dug into the monolith itself. By flaming torchlight, the guard led him upwards through labyrinthine caves, passing watchful bands of armed men at every turn. Just when Euthreus felt his old legs were ready to give up, the tunnels opened into expansive chambers, and light shone upon him from a bright crystal high above. More stairs waited ahead, but among these airy and well-lit rooms, overcoming them seemed less arduous. At a high place, filled with wide columns of mote-filled light, Euthreus was left standing before a table made of thick wooden beams. Its dark, wax-stained surface was covered in worn-edged books and rolls of crackling parchment. At its far side sat a man with a long feathered quill in his hand. There was a moment of silence as Euthreus locked eyes with him. Then the other man stood and called, "Bring him a chair." In a kinder voice he said to Euthreus, "Please sit." Euthreus shuddered as he lowered himself into the seat. He accepted the bowl of tea he was offered, but did not remove his cowl. "Dear priest," said the man, when the servants had made themselves scarce, "you look in pain. May I bring you something? We have many remedies in this place. The meadows south of here grow herbs for all manner of ailments." "Your offer is kind," said Euthreus, "but I wish not to numb my wits." The man watched the old priest drink. He sat down. "I am Avithen. I hope, having found me, your journey has come to an end." "Call me brother Euthreus," answered the priest, "and my journey will not be complete until I report to the Church of Elders." "If there is any assistance I can offer with your travels, you only have to name it." "My request is that you make this quick. The sooner I am on my way, the safer. There are many that would use unholy methods to accomplish what they believe are righteous ends. Many that fear I will accept your prophecy." "It is a sign of these dark times," said Avithen. "Now, praise be to our Lord Aten, our prayers have been answered." The priest sipped his tea, the sound of his wheezing drowned out by the chanting outside. "How does this work?" asked Avithen. "I ask questions and you answer them," replied Euthreus. Avithen's brow furrowed as he resettled himself into his chair. "How will I know the outcome of their decision?" "You are uncertain that you are a prophet?" "I did not say this, brother." "I sense your fear," said Euthreus without looking up from his tea. "I believe Aten has chosen me to be his voice. In him I trust." "But you do not trust the ageing beings of the flesh that claim a divine right to appoint his prophets?" Euthreus laughed. Avithen bowed his head. "I have faith in the Church of Elders, and I recognise their divine mandate." "Of course you do. Tell me, how did you find yourself in communication with Aten?" "I would not say I communicate with him," answered Avithen. "He communicates through me. I pray, and in my prayers I find divine answers to our troubles." "Very interesting," said Euthreus after several drawn-out moments. "And what troubles are those?" "You know of what I speak," said Avithen, his eyes ablaze. "Our religion is dying. Those who stay true to the calling fill mass graves across the near quadrant of the galaxy. Billions more perish from hunger and disease as they flee their would-be killers. Our leaders, meanwhile, are burned alive, cast from high towers, or are torn apart so that their bones may be used to build false idols. All followers who die in Aten's name are blessed." "But against such evil, dying without fighting achieves nothing," said Avithen. "We cannot preach our truth to the galaxy if we no longer exist. How are the sheep to shepherd themselves without Aten's word to guide them?" "Have faith," said Euthreus. "Trust in Aten, our Lord." "I do so, absolutely, and now our Lord has spoken. Avithen pointed to himself. There is no price too high to pay for the salvation of the galaxy. In this age, that price is the blood of those who would destroy us. Euthreus bowed his head. And we will soon become all that we abhor in our enemies. He took another sip of his tea. Among the planets and continents laid to waste by your armies were the lands where I was raised. My family and all those I knew in my youth are dead. Avithen stared at the priest for a while. I'm so sorry. I did not know I had caused you such loss. They belonged to a misguided people, said Euthreus, but what they needed was our help. You, however, have sent them to their maker unready. I only pray that Aten have mercy on their souls. I will pray to Aten. Our Lord will show them leniency. Do you pray for all your victims? Asked Euthreus. You must be busy. My warriors are Aten's tool against the tyranny that would wipe his followers from the galaxy. My hold over them grows. Such atrocities can be prevented and controlled. You are no general, muttered Euthreus. If Aten wishes it, I will be. The priest said nothing, but his eyes burned with contempt. Why did they send you? Asked Avithen. You have nothing but hatred for me. Your place is not to question our methods, said Euthreus. How many of your followers, might I ask, know that you have had no visions, heard no voices, and experienced no unexpected command to preach as you have done? Very few, though I have not claimed otherwise. Interesting. Euthreus's voice resonated with contempt. It would seem that reason rather than revelation has guided you to your conclusions. Reason is a tool for mortals, unfit for the divining of Aten's intentions. A tool given us by Aten, however imperfect it may be, so that we can know his wishes, said Avithen. Know you nothing of ancient history? Asked the priest. Long ago, when the ancients ruled the galaxy in the Golden Age, people following their reasoning, even when it led them further and further from the teachings of Aten, our Lord. And so it was that their punishment was terrible, and the galaxy was wiped near clean of life. The ancients you speak of dared to think they understood Aten, said Avithen. It was their arrogance that Aten punished with the great dying. That is your interpretation, said Euthreus. It is not mine. Beware reason and where it takes you. So be it, said Avithen, but I shall not entertain you with stories of visions I never saw or voices I never heard. Euthreus nodded. And without such confirmation, what then will you conclude when you are branded a liar? How then will you justify all you have done and the suffering and death you have brought upon his creation? I shall conclude that Aten had spoken, but the galaxy was not listening. And upon ignoring our Lord's message, all the galaxy would be damned to the swamps of hell. If we had been guaranteed our salvation, said Avithen, then we need not have concerned ourselves with finding it. Euthreus gave no response to this, but continued to watch Avithen. Avithen's breathing slowed, his gaze darting across the priest's face, desperate now to guess the older man's thoughts. Master! A female acolyte appeared at the door, hesitating when she saw Euthreus sitting opposite Avithen. They are calling for you again. They ask for you to lead them in prayer. Avithen looked past her to the large chamber beyond. Cool air came from there, carrying the calls of the horde outside. My followers await. Euthreus seemed to shrink in size. Go to them, he said, his voice feeble. He watched the prophet stand, adjust his robes and walk past the messenger. The chants outside became jubilant shouts, eclipsed by rising song. Euthreus listened in silence, and then he prayed.
Hello everyone, I'm James Vigor, and I'm here to give you a brief introduction to my science fiction novel, The Reality Exchange. It's the story of Winter Starling, a woman with a vital implant in her spine which is hijacked by forces unknown, and she is made to deliver a message to Earth, without knowing who it's from, who it's for, or what it contains. It's a story that dives deep into its characters, placing everyone in an impossible situation and testing the limits of their loyalty and resolve. I'm going to treat you now to a short extract. Chapter 1. Orange sunlight beat down upon the road. Fine dust permeated the hot air, and soldiers in full-body armour struggled to keep the sweat from their brows. The light reflected off the gleaming white spires, surveillance towers, and antennae of Port Jova, which stood tall behind the concrete wall that had been smoothed by the dust in the seasonal winds. Corporal Baron waved on the latest visitors. His well-worn face creased to a yawn as he watched them roll on through the gate, scraping the grit from the corners of his eyes, but only managing to cause further irritation. He blinked through the tears that welled up in defiance of the hardy, authoritative presence he had hoped to impose, and caught sight of a line of pale, blurry shapes approaching along the road. The dejected fusion of a sigh and a groan slipped out as he clocked the incoming trade convoy, then quickly checked that none of his fellow soldiers were in earshot. The exhaustion was getting to them all, but he had to be seen setting an example. He stood up straight, wiped the moisture from his forehead, and took a swig of his tepid water. It would take some time to register and approve a convoy of this size, but he would do it with a determination and stamina that would make the other Aurelians proud. "Move up! I want to be done with this lot in 5 minutes." They began to dawdle along the side of the road, slumped over and barely managing to keep their rifles held in 2 hands. The great cargo haulers were a curious blend of form and function, with cabins that curved back at the top and merged seamlessly into the large cargo container. Such industrial elegance, once white but now soiled and yellowed by the sandy winds, held aloft by 6 individually articulated sets of caterpillar tracks. One by one the haulers rumbled to a stop, with the foremost vehicle a dozen metres short of the gate. Baron inflated his chest and held his rifle across his body as he marched confidently towards the cabin and looked up at the driver. "Your business?" he barked. A thin smile nested itself in the driver's black stubble. He swiped his fringe away from his eyes, leaned out of his window, and looked back at the long line of cargo haulers behind him, before turning back to Baron. He lowered his sunglasses to the end of his nose. "Trade, I would imagine. And what are you hauling?" "Only the finest in perfectly legitimate renewables, officer," he chirped with feigned enthusiasm. Baron fixed the driver with an unsmiling stare and watched the attempted levity deflate. "Plant matter, fertilizer, etc. All suitably boring, I can assure you." Baron drew out a small device, a glass tablet with a holographic display. The interface was nearly invisible out here, blending almost perfectly with the sunlight. "Thumbprint." Baron held the device up. The driver pressed his thumb through one of the holograms and onto the glass. A chirping noise, barely audible above the sound of rumbling engines, confirmed an identification match. Baron held the device close to his chest to shield it from the sunlight. Even so, he had to squint to read the display. As he squeezed his eyelids together, drowsiness from the heat swept over him. He skimmed the driver's file. Everything seemed to check out. "Move up to the gate." Baron stepped back and waved his hand in dismissal. The driver pushed his sunglasses back up and made a toothy, almost cartoonish smile as he edged his vehicle towards the barrier. Another soldier with a rifle across his chest held up a hand to signal him to come to a stop. Baron made his way towards the back of the convoy, taking a quick swig of tepid water. It would take some time to sort through all the cargo, but once that was done, the approval would be quick and simple. Nearly halfway down the line, he glanced back towards the front. It took a couple of seconds too long for his weary mind to realize something was amiss. He stopped abruptly and shielded his eyes from the sunlight. Why was the door on the lead transport open? Where were the guards? Then a distant call. "Officer!" It came from about 100 yards away from the hauler where the transport driver stood leaning against the starport wall. He raised a fist above his head. Was he holding something? A flash, a thunderous boom. The cargo hauler at the gate erupted into flames. The shockwave rushed out, kicking up an expanding wall of dust, and slammed into Baron, punching the breath from his body and hurling him from his feet. There was darkness. Silence. Then Baron's lungs forced a sharp intake of breath, and everything felt all too real. The heat of the ground beneath him, a throbbing pain in his chest and back, a piercing tone in his head, interrupted by rapid cracks in the distance. Gunfire. He forced his eyes to open. All he could make out in his stupor was a dark column of smoke rising into the sky. The gunshots became less frequent. Amid the chaos, yells turned to cries, shouts turned to screams. Then the sounds of conflict came to silence, and all Baron could hear around him was a whistling breeze and the rhythmic crunch of dirt beneath boots. His breaths rapid and irregular, his heart pounding loud and fast, Baron struggled to lift his head. The footsteps fell silent. Looming over him, dark against the white sky, was the silhouette of the driver. He felt a firm grasp around his ankles, then felt the ground scraping against the armour on his back. But it stopped after only a few seconds, once he had been enveloped by the shade between two of the cargo haulers that remained intact. He felt a tug at his thigh as the man squatted over him and pulled his handgun from its holster. Baron found his own weapon aimed at him, inches from his face. The ringing in his ears was too loud for him to hear what the driver was saying. The man began calmly, but it wasn't long before he was making wild gestures, waving the gun all over the place. He was ranting, something about fairness and justice, but Baron was in pain and too tired to listen. He let his head fall back and his eyes close. Hey! Baron just hoped that somehow this would all go away. Come on now, Aurelian. This could still be a dream. It had to be. Not listening? All right. A bang, searing pain in his left hand. Baron let out a scream, his eyes snapping open as his gut convulsed, and he lurched upright, only to meet the sole of a boot that slammed him back into the dirt. He brought his hand up in front of his face. An enormous hole had been carved through it. His fingers hung off by the thin shreds of meat that remained. He couldn't stop crying out, clutching his hand to his chest. He was aware of the ranting voice, but all sense was drowned out by the pain. Occasional words slipped through. The war, Aurelian pioneers, solar conglomerate. Don't see the irony, do you? The man raised a blood-spattered eyebrow. The one non-renewable resource. The most valuable. The butt of the pistol came down towards him. Baron tried to pull his hand away, but he couldn't move. The pain exploded as shrieks were ripped from inside him. I'm talking about you, dummy, the life of a person. Can't grow that back, can you? The ever louder shouts made no sense. Baron pressed his eyes tightly closed, clutching at the fire in his hand, sobbing for home. Something cool pressed against the bridge of his nose. He looked to see his own pistol lined up between his eyes, and stared transfixed. In his peripheral vision he was aware of the man's mouth moving. More words. He couldn't listen. Couldn't hear. Could only pull in another breath. His last. As the bullet left the gun.
The Star Protocol by the Marett Brothers, Chapter 3. Dash stepped through the doorway into a new corridor, followed by Cassandra. Ahead of them, 50 feet down, another blown-in door and a room beyond. With a caution born from years of Delta Force training, Dash readied his gun and beckoned Cassandra to follow. His gaze darted from place to place, noting the shadows sucking in the weak illumination. A small figure darted past the doorway in front of them. Dash froze as Cassandra stifled a gasp. He put his finger to his mouth. Come on, he whispered, taking a firm hold of her hand. Stay behind me. A mess of metallic tables and consoles met his eyes. Screens flickered on and off. Charts and graphs lay everywhere. Panels had been torn apart. Metal frames and pipework hung from above. The consoles trailed thin fibre optic filaments. He stumbled as loose wires caught round his ankles, hard to see through the thick mist that carpeted the floor. No sign of the small figure. If he hadn't heard Cassandra react to that brief flash of movement, he might believe he'd dreamt it. He could feel her moving nimbly behind him, just the racing pulse at her wrist giving away her fear. God alone knew what was going through her head. Even he was way beyond his comfort zone now. Her free hand pointed to the centre of the room. Standing in the middle of the room, rising from the black floor, an operating table, perhaps. At one end, various tendrils of different metals hung like dead octopus suspended by a pole. He imagined lying on the slab with all those tendrils alive, slithering like snakes about his body. up his nose and into his ears. He shuddered. Guns and bullets he could cope with. Weird operating tables were a bit much. What a horrible torture room, he thought. This must be their medbay, said Cassandra. Yes, that made more sense. Over there, Cassandra whispered and pointed. At the far end, Dash could see a set of stairs against the wall which led to a small balcony. Looking down at them from the shadows was what on first glance appeared to be a small child. Although its features were all distorted and hard to distinguish in the light, it was about 4 foot tall, dark grey skin, a thin childlike body and a large head. Too large to be human. The creature had no discernible ears, although it did have what appeared to be nostrils, no nose, but 2 vertical slits close together under the eyes, and a small mouth. Its large, black, opaque eyes bored into Dash. Dash became hot and sweaty. Hate emanated from the alien's eyes. Dash pointed his weapon at the creature. And there's more at thestarprotocol.co.uk and The Star Protocol by the Marett Brothers. It's available on Amazon.
Hello everyone, and welcome to the author chat for the Sci-Fi Spotlight. We're just going to do a quick round table sort of introduction style. So I'm James Vigor. I wrote The Reality Exchange, which is my debut novel, science fiction. Jack, do you want to go next?
I'm Jack. Yeah, I'm Jack Mann. I wrote Gravity's Arrow, a sci-fi novel with a fantasy feel.
And I'm Ray Marett, and I am half of the Marett Brothers. We wrote a story together called The Star Protocol, which was all about the Anunnaki fighting Delta Force. It was like a modern Flash Gordon, basically. Super fun.
Good.
Cool.
And you're also all of our novel front cover producers, aren't you? I mean, as in you made all of our front covers.
I fell into the front cover design. Yeah. So I did the front cover for the Star Protocol. So I looked around for artists, and I thought, you know what, I can draw myself.
I'd say
and
so.
then work with you, Jack, on yours.
Yeah.
You were quite you were a very strict client. You knew exactly what you wanted. Yeah, you were like, I want this, I want that man bigger. Actually, Jamie, you were a bit like that as well, thinking about it.
I think I was by the end. I went into it having no idea. I think you did a couple of completely different versions of stuff. There was this was probably actually fairly close to the first thing that you showed, but I do remember a sort of much more like block color kind of thing as well.
You sort of toyed around with a white cover, and you wanted it more modern. So I did a more graphical version, which was my favorite.
And then I said, "Yeah, ditch that. We'll go back to the first one."
Yeah, I know. And I was like, "Oh, okay." But yeah, it was sort of. I don't know. All of ours, I think, are quite old school, which is my kind of favorite kind of cover, anyway. So I sort of lean towards that. Sort of a bit of a Blade Runner-y vibe for your cover, James. I liked it.
I really like mine. So I went into mine not really knowing what it was I wanted out of it specifically. I sort of had a checklist of things that I didn't want, was the main thing. And then aside from that, I was sort of open to everything. So I knew I didn't want a spaceship on the cover, for one thing, despite it being a sci-fi book and that being a sort of staple of how to sell the kind of thing you might expect from a sci-fi book. I really didn't want that because I didn't want to sell the idea that it was about sort of planet hopping or interstellar travel, or there's a crucial element of that in the book, but it's not what the book or what the story is. And I also didn't want to show the protagonist's face or anything like that, because having the reader be able to sort of imagine that for themselves, I quite like that. So it was those kinds of things.
Yeah. Sorry, go on. Sorry.
Yeah, no, it was just those kinds of things where I was like, I definitely don't want this, but what do I want? I don't know. But yeah, super happy with the result though. I think the sort of X-ray view of the spine with the implant in it, I think that looks absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah, and that was sort of the crux of that was sort of the main sort of point of your story, wasn't it? that thing that sort of
Yeah.
go there. But yeah, I sort of went for more sort of mature color scheme on yours, same as Jack's. Like with the Star Protocol, it's a young adult story. That's the close up of the cover. So we went for Fortnite colors, basically, like bright, young, and funny enough, we did put a spaceship on the cover because we wanted people to know that it is a 1950s. We use all the sci-fi tropes in our story. It's very sort of, there's that, you sort of read it all before in different places. We've kind of just put it all together in a nice little package. But
it's
I wanted
that very familiar
know,
flying saucer silhouette that everyone will recognise.
Yeah. So you kind of where you are when you buy it. So we went for the spaceship. I had a few other sort of, George did a few other sketches up, but that was the one we went for in the end. But yeah.
Thanks for Ramon for putting up with all my changes of opinion and stuff. So at one point I was like, kind of dragons, because there's dragons in it and there's guns. I thought people on dragons with guns have to be in the image, and they could be flying across a destroyed landscape that they've been destroying earlier. And then you're coming up with ideas. And then I wanted the religion stuff, because it's like an evil religion trying to take over the galaxy. And I think it was my daughter's birthday party, and I was canvassing ideas from all the people that were there. And someone mentioned various sort of images I could look at and take inspiration from, and then I was just throwing you PowerPoints and stuff, wasn't I? Of like this, and this. Try not to plagiarize anything too much.
I remember drawing dragons flying over.
You did.
Landscape, and then you were like, I don't want to do that. I was like, fine. Save that one for another day.
It was going to be a desert planet, then it was a forest planet or something, and then all that sort of stuff.
Well, I think I just misinterpreted when you were talking about.
No, I'm not sure. I was sure which one I wanted anyway at the time, so you probably didn't misinterpret. But I can't remember anyway. But thank you, it was good.
I feel like I misdescribed Winter, my protagonist, when we were first doing it. I think I just described her hair color wrong or something, because I mention it in the book at some point. But just my mental image of her was for some reason slightly different than the text actually says. So when I was just writing that email off the top of my head, I was like, this is what she looks like. And then I referred back to the text, like, that's actually not it at all. So the little bit that you can see of her, I still cocked it up.
Yeah. The funny thing about doing the covers where you was talking about you don't see the face. I know there's a lot of books are like that, where you don't see the cover, the person's face. I quite like the idea of.
Well, you've made some on your website.
I do understand the point. Like in our story, we don't really describe what the main characters look like in the story, just so that people can put their own, idea into who these people are, put themselves into their shoes. There's like 5 different characters, and they could appeal to different people. And you could be that person. You can read it and you can be that. Oh, I would be that character, or I would be this person. So I do get it. But I do like. I think I just like drawing faces. So
but I feel like I've seen pictures of your characters on your website or something.
Oh yeah. I have. Yeah.
I can definitely see it both ways. It's the cover is sort of an adaptation of the source material in any case, right? And an adaptation is never necessarily 100%. Mirror to what the actual text says in any case. So to sort of sell the idea of the story and the characters, it doesn't necessarily need to be that will always be exactly how it is.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of the covers where I've seen faces. It's normally romance novels, isn't it?
I guess so.
I normally read, anyway.
Well, I can say that I'm pretty sure my next book, I'll have a better idea what I want at the front cover. So I'll have a slightly more specific brief next time.
What is your next book about?
Yeah.
My next book is just going to be the sequel to the Reality Exchange and the conclusion of Winter's story, which has taken me a very long time to get around to, because when I wrote the first book, I didn't really have the conclusion all sorted out. I had a story that I wanted to tell, but it didn't come full circle. So I told that story and left those threads at the end, and I thought that's fine if people like it, and if I enjoy the process and actually want to come back and write another one, then I can do that, and I can pick it up. And I had a few ideas where it could go from there. But when I actually started trying to plan the sequel, it was much harder than I thought it would be to start picking that up and make a satisfying narrative out of it. I'm pretty much there now, which is a big relief. But yeah, it's been a real challenge to do that properly. And I think that's a big learning for future projects. I think even if I'm not necessarily going to do the whole thing, or if I want to just sort of leave myself the option of going, well, we'll just sort of see how this one does, and I think I still need a better idea of what the overall story is going to be.
I find it easier to write the ending to begin with. With the Star Protocol, well, the story came from my brother. He wrote the story. I just sort of helped with getting it onto, novelizing it, if you like.
Yeah.
But I also wrote one of the stories for the Elite Dangerous anthology, and it was always the ending it's kind of what I write first. You kind of need to, for me anyway, is knowing where that journey is going to end up.
Same here. Yeah, I think I have an ending in mind. Like I have an idea of an ending or an emotional response, an ending that gives the emotional response I want.
Yeah.
And then I gear everything towards generating that. So it needs to make enough sense, not, jar you out of the story, has to, all that sort of stuff has to work together so that when you get to that moment, you're really committed. And then when it happens in the way I want it to happen, you feel that whatever elated or exciting feeling, hopefully.
That's really interesting.
On the subject of the covers again, so we ended up with this guy with a pointy hat, the kind of black Ku Klux Klan outfit bad guy.
Yeah.
And I remember because after that happened, I hadn't finished finally editing it, I think. So then I managed to go back and put in some guy who looked like that, sort of like he was really an elder, walking around with this pointy hat, and they were scared of him or something. And just to make him more relevant, with that, because it was such a cool image. Couldn't.
Yeah, that's a good point. It does help working on the cover whilst you're still writing the story. But we had a cover done. There was an artist called Bob Lazel he used to do a lot of sci-fi covers in the 70s. We did actually get him to do the front cover originally, but I was excited. We got the cover done. We haven't really done much of the story, and it changed so much by the time it came to publishing it that his cover was just wrong. It just didn't fit with the story anymore. So yeah, I think doing the cover whilst you're writing towards the end is probably because you can adapt it a bit. Because funny enough, like the flying saucer that you can see, it has a dome on the top, and it never did, but that was just because Bob Lazel had drawn one with a dome on the top. So we went back and rewrote it to fit. But then we realised we had changed so much that his flying saucer still wasn't the right type of flying saucer. It looked too Star Trek-y, and we wanted it more 50s, 1950s sort of sci-fi.
Sure,
but,
sort of Roswell.
Sort of whilst you still edit the book, but not too early that you end up with a completely irrelevant cover. But you were sort of talking about the way you write, actually, both of you. Do you think you'll always be sticking to sci-fi, James? And then are you playing a whole series of reality exchange stories or other sci-fi settings, or would you move to a different genre? Like, because some sci-fi and fantasy tend to be people can write both.
Yeah. So I am planning
to Jack afterwards.
Yeah, I will certainly pass that on. I am planning for the reality exchange. I couldn't tell you what the name of the series is because it's just a book. But for it to be a 2-book series. So the next installment will be the conclusion. After that, I do have ideas for a fantasy sort of story that I want to tell. I imagine that'll be a longer series, possibly just longer books, or it could be a trilogy or something like that. So yeah, I really like sci-fi, but I also really like fantasy. I feel like I have to give both their just time. I've been playing a lot of D&D over the last few years, so it's fantasy has taken a real root in my mind of late.
Did you start D&D during lockdown or before?
I didn't. I started before it got cool. I played a little bit of 4th edition during secondary school, and then I really picked up on 5th edition during university, which would have been 4 years or so before lockdown. But of course we did a lot during lockdown because there's what else was there to do?
I think that's when we started playing it properly. I think funny you say secondary school. It was always the Middle Earth role-playing game, but I don't think that's not even published anymore. It was a really good one. Yeah.
What was it? It was an unpublished.
It was called the Middle Earth role-playing game. I can't remember who published it. There is a Middle Earth. There's a new Middle Earth one coming out that just uses the 5th edition rules now for Dungeons and Dragons. But that one was more like 5th edition, I thought, as 5th edition is now.
But what about science fiction, Jack? Are you going to stick with science fiction, or?
Yeah. So I was thinking, as you spoke, my answer would be that in my ideal author my ideal author career arc would be do more sequels and stuff with this, Gravity's Arrow world, because I'm really pleased with the world. I love the fact that it's got a kind of fantasy vibe, but it's sort of science fiction-y, basis. And I've even got that. I don't know if I said last time, but I got a guy who had a PhD in theoretical physics to help me make a theory that explained all the sort of stuff in it, and it's at least as good as most of the other kind of faster than light travel sci-fi stories out there. So I'm pleased with that. But then I guess if that was going well, I'd like to write some contemporary stuff, maybe some medical thrillers or something, because I'm a doctor and stuff and have ideas for, and maybe some other kind of just general thrillers. And then if I finish all that stuff, maybe I'd then go on to fantasy after I've made a name for myself in this fantasy future of mine where I've done well with the sci-fi. But I'd love to do all the fantasy and real and modern stuff and sci-fi and nearer term sci-fi as opposed to far off sci-fi, which was like what I'm doing now. But,
Did you ask the physicist to write to sort of justify your science in the story? Have you had a hand at using AI or tried using AI?
What, ChatGPT to do that kind of stuff, or?
Well, the reason I bring it up because I'm sort of working on I want to do a series of short stories, and funnily enough, combine fantasy and sci-fi. I thought if I create a world that's, I was going to say 40,000 years in the future, but that's already been done. So let's say 20,000 years. A long time in the future where humanity has sort of spread out. A little bit like the Foundation, really, where it's everywhere, and you don't even really know where Earth is anymore.
Yeah.
You can do fantasy stories set in that thing, and you can do sci-fi stories. And so one of the ideas I was working on is there's a research ship at a neutron star, and they're looking for tachyons, which are theoretical particles. But what I wanted was they hear a distress signal on a planet, and they go down, and it's them that sent it because the radio wave, they've sent the radio wave, and the tachyons have pushed that radio wave back in time. So I was using AI to say, like, is this possible? And it does say, and it gives you the answer. Obviously, all it does is it's looking at the internet for you.
Yeah.
But it was saying, first of all, it says tachyons aren't real; they're theoretical. So and every answer is basically saying you're stupid. Tachyons aren't real. But then it would say, but if they were, yes, it is theoretically possible that it would push a radio wave, because the radio wave is just a light wave anyway, so the particles would push it back in time. So I was like, okay, that's interesting. And then you just go off on one, and I was just like, so what would an atmosphere look like then? I said it'd be multicolored. I was like, oh, what, like oil or like the Northern Lights? And they said it'd be like the Northern Lights because it's just charged particles in the air. So your sky would be all multicolored. I thought, God, this is great. And then,
interesting.
and then I was like, well, what type of ship would be in this star system? Would it be a mining vessel? Would it be a research vessel? And then they said it would be a research vessel. Gives you all and it's just a load of information that's almost like asking a professor to just help with your research. And I tried another one where I was like, okay, I've got an idea for a story. Give me the beat sheet. Give me the story beats for this story. And it was rubbish. and you just think, right, AI can't write a story. And whilst, and I'll tell you what, something else, reading its story ideas, which were rubbish, made me think The Rings of Power on Amazon was written by AI. The way it was just almost nonsensical. It just, yeah. You just think, you just wonder, and like with the writer's strikes and everything, like I have a conspiracy theory, which my book is all about conspiracy theory, so this is on brand.
Fantastic.
I have a conspiracy theory that Amazon were developing AI, and they thought, we'll do the Rings of Power in AI, and then when it's a big success, we'll say, did you know AI wrote this? And because it was awful, they've gone, let's work on our AI and keep it all quiet. And now the writers have gone on strike. And why are they suddenly gone on strike moaning about AI if it hasn't already been done?
I wonder if you look into the credits, see who the writers were, and see if they're real people or just professional prompt writers.
Yeah. But I can see a future with AI sort of helping. I can't see I can see a future where AI could write a whole story. I think that's the scary thing.
Yeah.
I'd love for it to be just sort of as you described, just like a tool to really help you answer questions that otherwise might just take ages of looking up, like because especially with that stuff about tachyons, I would imagine that that's going to be some quite advanced reading that you might have to do. When actually you really only need a simple answer. What would this thing look like? Could it in theory do this thing? And you don't necessarily need to understand the exact theory about it. You just need someone who can sort of pass that information and tell you actually yes, it would do that thing that you needed to do.
Well, I said where would you most likely find that, and it was like probably around black holes. I thought that's no good for the story. What about a neutron star? Yes, a neutron star would be a good alternative. So this is what I don't understand AI. Would it have just said yes if I'd said down the road? Yes, down the road. Like.
I think it will depend on your AI model. Some might well say that. The thing that apparently, sorry. Go on.
I was just going to say, you feel like Geordie. You have to from Star Trek. You have to ask the computer the right questions to get the answer that you want as well. Yeah.
Oh god, what was I going to say?
I shouldn't have butted in. Sorry.
What were your views on AI?
No, I was going to say. I think the one thing it can't do very well at the moment is like source that information or give you citations. So if you were to say, can you show me where you got that information from, or you can show me a research paper or something, it can do a very good job of giving you a real looking citation, but as soon as you go and look it up, you'll realize that it's fake. Because it's just, you ask for a bibliography and it knows what a bibliography should look like, but it doesn't necessarily have access to Google Scholar.
Yeah, but you wonder where it's going to be in 10 years, don't you?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's, like you say, that's the frightening thing. How much can it replace?
That's why you're sort of scared about it, but at the same time you think, well, if I don't embrace this, other people will embrace it, and you're just going to be left behind. So it's sort of knowing what to do. Just thinking that it's like those people at Industrial Light and Magic that made all the models, and as soon as CGI came out, very quickly they were out of a job.
Is that right?
Yeah.
That's hard.
And I mean, I think Industrial Light and Magic were doing programs to teach their current staff to use the computers to make the CGI, but a lot of them were, sort of a few years' time they were going to retire anyway.
Okay.
It was just kind of an early end for them.
I guess nowadays CGI is very, very good, but for a while you could tell the difference. I mean, now I think it's very difficult. But
I think the goal was always photorealism, and now it's come sort of full circle. Now it's all about the art again. Things like the Spider-Man one, the cartoon is very artistically done. It looks really nice.
Yeah, I think the new Ninja Turtles film as well looked very stylized. I haven't seen the film, but I did catch a trailer for it and thought it looked very snazzy.
Stop. What do you call it? Stop motion capture.
They've done it in that kind of style.
Yeah.
It's sort of lower frame rate and sort of comic book-esque, but still clearly 3D animated. It's quite impressive.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I hope AI circles back around on that as well, because I would hate to see it actually replace, the sort of human creativity.
Yeah, we need purpose in life, don't we?
Yeah.
Just rather than enjoying the products of AI or whatever. Yeah.
Cool.
But if you could do instead of AI, how do I make a spaceship that can travel faster than the speed of light?
Yeah.
And then it goes, you do it this way. Oh, brilliant.
Oh, good. That's the next 100 years of technical advancements just solved for you.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I've talked a little bit about what my next project was going to be. I'm concluding Winter's story with a sequel to the Reality Exchange. Do you guys have sort of follow-up projects? Jack, you'd already talked about wanting to sort of continue from Gravity's Arrow. Is that a series you've got in mind, or is it sort of theoretical at this stage?
No, I've already written a lot of the next book, and I've mapped out the next 3 books, which are it's like a trilogy following on from when he's like in his 20s and stuff. So he's living in a different empire, and it's a bit like the Roman Empire sort of thing, and that you do your military service and then you go into politics after that if that's what you want to do. And so he's making that transition. He starts the story off in a special ops mission, and then he sort of goes on to kind of trying to network his way into sort of higher politics and stuff, and getting leadership roles in the military and things, and then sort of starts unraveling, sense. Oh yeah, that's right. His friend is murdered at the start, and he's trying to figure out why that happened. And it was a bit of a weird murder with kind of cult ritual kind of vibes to it and stuff. And he's trying to understand why would anyone do that and who would do it. And so it's a bit of a murder mystery stroke conspiracy theory kind of thing going on alongside the 3 books, where he's also still engaged in a war with Credate, as I pronounce it. I know people call it Credate sometimes, the religious empire that he's kind of been combating throughout the first book. And I've got it plotted out. I'm happy with it. I just need to write it. I've written a lot of the chapters, and but I just need to go through it again and polish it up and finish off the first one. Yeah, and then looking forward to it, getting stuck in. But I'm just
how far away is it, do you think?
Well, I'm just snowed under with work for now, but I'm looking at November time, having a bit of a relaxation on that. So I'm helping my hospital introduce a kind of IT system and stuff for my department, making sure that all goes off as smoothly as possible, and dealing with some kind of. I'm lead for skin cancer in Southeast London now, so I'm trying to help with some stuff to do with that, and I think things will calm down a bit in November, and then I'm planning to kind of get stuck into novel writing again. That is my plan. So I'm penting up the energy and stuff. Yeah.
Nice. In for the long haul.
Real life is a pain, isn't it?
Yeah.
How about you, Ramon? What are you doing next?
Well, I'm working on that anthology of short stories. Simon's already written half of book 2 for the Star Protocol.
Okay.
But between us, it took us a while to write the first one, just going back and forth. So I imagine it's a good 12 months away, possibly more before that one comes out. But yeah, it's called The Blood Princes. Is the sequel.
Okay, cool.
Nice. Do you have like a series name? So if the Star Protocol is the name of the first book, is that book 1 in the something series or saga or something, or is this Star Protocol book 2?
I think it's I think it's like yours. It's a 2-parter. So it'll be finishing that story off. So I wouldn't. Yeah, I don't think it's got a series name. It would probably be the Star Protocol Part 2, if we were going to call it anything like that.
Sure.
I think probably just calling it the Blood Princes and sort of delving deeper into the past than what the Star Protocol was about. Yeah,
that's interesting because I have no idea where I'd start on naming a series. I guess I would basically do the same. Just go whatever the next one is the Reality Exchange book 2. I have a title in mind, but how to actually link the two together as far as a title is concerned, or how to introduce it as the second part of a story.
Yeah.
I was going to call the series or the trilogy that's coming next The Gods of Minas, because there are gods in this empire he's in, and Minas is the currency they use, and I was imagining some kind of economic theory thing that if money represents, your contribution. Oh, hang on, what does it represent? Represents what society values, I guess, sort of thing, or supposed to anyway. And then I guess in our society that we have, money's often in a kind of debt form, and so I think I had this theory that when you're born, you get given a sort of loan, if you like, or the gods give you, or the temple gives you some money, and you have to pay interest on it, and it's showing that you're kind of contributing to the society, sort of stuff, and of course, if you get in enough debt, you become a slave. And there was some. When I initially had the idea, I was going to have more monetary stuff in there, but I don't know if it'll feature anymore. But I'll try and find a way of making it relevant. I like the name, the words "gods of Minas." Whether I can still find relevance for it and justify using that.
Do you find you come up with a name first?
Only for this one.
I've got loads of book titles written down, and just the titles.
The Reality Exchange was the last thing I think I came up for with this book. I'd sent manuscripts to FBP, and they were like, "It's really weird that you still haven't given us a title for this, by the way." It was the title and the cover, and then it was released.
Yeah, you kind of think, I thought I'd leave that to you guys.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to have to go.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think we're basically out of time anyway. But should we just quickly go around and say where people can find you as well? Should we start with you, Ray?
Probably Instagram. The best one is Instagram.com, obviously, /RG Marett would be my one.
There you go. How about you, Jack?
Well, I've got a website, gravitiesarrow.com, but I guess I do have a Facebook page as well, which I think is actually my name as a page rather than my name as myself. Yeah.
I should probably say I've got startprotocol.co.uk as well, actually.
Yeah. I am at jamesvigor.co.uk, but it's an old site that I've updated very little. The main place you can find me is on Twitter, though I suspect by the time this comes out, things may have changed a little bit more. I may be on Blue Sky by then, who knows? But you can find me on Twitter currently at OneVigor. Or X, I should say X.
Yeah. Right. Great chatting to you guys.
Nice chatting to you guys, yeah.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks a lot. Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.
See ya.
Bye.